Hello and welcome to another Trash to Track repair. In this episode I'm going to be looking at this 93XX Mogul Great Western Loco sent in by Mark. And Mark has said that this needs a service and the wheels have gone funny. The plastic inserts have expanded and it's affecting running. The front pony wheel is also broken and there is a buffer missing, although the buffer is present in the box. The tender is lacking a coupling and the wheels are quite dirty, so I'm going to have a look, see if we can get this restored back to running order. Now, very handily, Mark has also supplied the replacement set of wheels for this loco. So this coupling for the tender should go underneath the brake rigging, so I'll have a look later and get this fitted. But for now we'll look at the loco part, and this is the split chassis design. And yeah, you can clearly see the plastic inserts on the wheels have all ballooned out, which will stop this model from running correctly. Now, I recently looked at one of these on a B1. Very common problem with some early Bachmann models. And what I usually do is I usually cut the inserts out and then araldite the wheel balance weights back onto the wheels and paint them. As I said, Mark has very kindly supplied a brand new wheel set for this model. There we go. There's nothing else in the box. No. So we've got a brand new wheel set, and we're going to look at stripping this model down, giving it a full service, putting the new wheels in, and see if we can restore it to running order. Now, a quick battery test proves it did work. Now, this bit of plastic that's fallen off, that is part of the insulator for the split chassis. So that's not good that that's broken already. We're not even taking the body off yet. But there again, another common problem with these split chassis is that plastic insulation sleeve does corrode and break away. So I'll show you later what I do to replace those. But now I've removed the two screws, one under the smoke box and one under the firebox. And we've got the, like I said, split chassis arrangement with these powerful Bachmann motors. This side rod on this side is missing its retaining clip, so I'm going to have to find another one of those. So now I'm going to take the base plate off, and this should release the wheels. First off, I'm going to take the remains of that front pony away. I'll repair that later with a small piece of plasticard. Removing the two screws off the underframe will allow the underframe to drop away, giving access to the axles and allowing the wheels to fall out. And there we go. And to be honest, the axles don't actually look split. They just look like, it just looks like it was the centre of the wheels that's stopping this from running. So like I said, this model is held together. There are small clips on the piston rod, tiny metal circular clips. One of them's missing. But this one I just prise away with the end of my scalpel, and you can see it on the end of my finger there. And that clips around the crank pin and holds everything in place. And with that removed, I can remove the piston rods, and there's the old wheel set. Very dirty and very broken. If I just remove this crank pin with my hex driver, you will see what I mean. Wheels come off the axle. But look, that plastic insert is bulging right out. And with a pair of pliers, I can just pull it out. Now, like I said, if I was repairing this without the set of wheels, I would just cut this down to the balance weight detail and glue that onto the wheels, which I've done in the past. And you'll see me do that later in this video, because bizarrely, like the Class 66s I looked at, when I got sent two identical models, I've been sent two of these as well, exact the same model, but both with different problems. So we'll concentrate on this one, and we're going to split the chassis down now just so I can service it all. Removing the two screws, or at least attempting to, because the two plastic insulation pieces are both broken. There's another bit that's broken off. Now, it's not too bad inside here. There is a bit of congealed old grease that will need cleaning off, and it is fairly dusty. There's the spacer washer. I better keep that aside because I will need that. Testing the motor's very powerful, no problems with that. Their motors are pretty robust and they last for years. So I'm just taking out all the insulation pieces and any springs and that could get lost, and then dusting down the chassis with the brush. The springs in the two chassis halves, as I mentioned, they transfer power from the chassis halves to the brush terminals. Now, using a cotton bud and mess, I'm going to clean all the old lubrication away, including inside the wheel arches, because on this type of model the wheels transfer power to the chassis through the wheel arches and contacts, so everything needs to be spotlessly clean. So again, I've just got this footage speed up a bit just so you can see me cleaning every part of this of these two chassis halves need cleaning. So once everything was cleaned, I started to reassemble the chassis. The bearing piece was put in, the motor was put back in, the two springs, and also the gear there, and you can see how it goes back together. Pretty simple affair. It is. They are quite simple to work on, these models. And then the other chassis half was turned around. These spacer washers need putting in, and you'll notice when I film this part here, I actually missed something out. Now, I put it back together, but I don't put the white spacer pieces in at the bottom, which the base plate screws into. But here you can see I have taken it apart again and put them in. But I did forget to put these in when I reassembled the model on camera. So you must remember to put these back in, otherwise your base plate won't be able to be screwed back on. So to replace the missing insulation pieces, I use these plastic M2 nuts and bolts. I wear them down on a Dremel so that they fit into the holes, and the actual nut part I sand and cut down so that they are square and they fit in one side of the chassis, allowing the bolt to be tightened up from this side. And these nylon plastic screws act as good spacers, and they are good. Like I said, I've used them all the time with those broken insulators, and they are very, very good. They're non-conductive, obviously, and here's a close-up of the nut which has been cut down to fit the square hole. A slot is cut in the top of these bolts using the Dremel so that I can tighten them up with a screwdriver. And once they're all tightened and the two chassis halves are electrically insulated, then I'm going to test it. So I just stand it on the workbench and a battery on one half, and you'll see that the motor's spinning. So that proves that both sides of the chassis are insulated. Once I'm happy that it's all done, I get the Dremel again, and I'm just going to sand these down so they're flush with the chassis sides, because if they're not, the body shell probably won't go back on, because there is limited clearance inside these body shells. So I just use that and get rid of any excess plastic. And now we've got to the point where we can put the new wheel set in, and this will only go in one way. So make sure they are the correct way up and the correct orientation, and then giving it a quick battery test. Whole chassis and the new wheels are running nice. So that's the chassis fully serviced. The plastic insulator has been replaced with those M3 nylon nuts and bolts, and the new wheels have been fitted. Now, before I put the base keeper plate back on, I lubricate these models with some Pico Electrolube. This is conductive, and it also proves some lubrication for the wheels because they do spin in the metal chassis halves and there's no proper bearings. So because that lubrication is conductive, it should aid with electrical pickup. I also add a small amount of Labelle 106 grease to the gear there, and again get the wheels just to turn so that it goes into the drivetrain, and then the base keeper plate is put back on, pushed on from the rear, clipped down to the front, and then the two retaining screws we took out earlier are replaced. And this is where you trip up if you forget to put those white insulating pieces in, because it simply won't fit back on. The piston rods and slide bars are put back in. into the cylinder, over the crank pin, and then those tiny little spring clips that you can see on the end of my finger there when the camera focuses. Those are pushed back on. Now that's not easy, and I did that off camera because I needed to concentrate. If you don't do it properly, they will spring off into the ether. But once they're on, they hold the piston rod and side rods all on. And I just put them on using my needle nose pliers and a couple of cocktail sticks just to clip them around the end of that crank pin. And now it's another battery test to make sure everything's running smoothly and nicely, which it is. So nothing is catching, no short circuits. And this is Mark's 93XX virtually rebuilt. So now that's all done, it's time to reunite the body and chassis. And you can see there that the front bogie, or the front pony wheel, I've repaired with some plasticard. And I'm just securing the chassis back to the body with the 2 screws we took out earlier on. One in the front there, and one down here at the back under the smoke box. And the only thing I did with the pony wheel was to glue a piece of plasticard on the old tabs to hold the front wheel in, and then it was painted black using some Tamiya matte black paint. The front pony wheel is then screwed back into place. Now there's no like bearing or stopper on this. You just have to screw it on until it turns freely but is secure. If you screw the screw down fully, it will hold it in place. Now the remaining buffer on the loco was broken, so I decided to take it off. I'm going to go through my spares to see if I've got a matching pair that I can replace on this model so it looks presentable. And I do find some nice ornate buffers and drill the holes out with a 2mm drill bit so that the replacement buffer shanks will fit into the buffer beam. And these are secured in place with a small amount of Loctite super glue, and it just finishes off the face of the model. So a tiny bit of glue on the shank of the buffer there, and then it's pushed and held into the hole until the glue takes. I don't know where these buffers came from, they were just a matching pair that I had in my spares, and they suited this model very well. So that is Mark's 93XX loco rebuilt fully, brand new wheel set, fully serviced, and is ready for another good few years service on Mark's layout. And you can see it here running backwards and forwards rather nicely. Now the second 93XX was sent to me by Roger, who said he's had this many years. Now this loco was suffering from a similar problem, but only the front wheel on this loco had the ballooned plastic, and it was also missing a piston rod from one side. So I'm going to strip this down in exactly the same way. I'm not going to do this in a step-by-step because you've just watched it, but I'm going to try and find a replacement for the missing side rod. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to take that plastic insert out, cut the balance weight off, and then glue it back onto the wheel and paint the wheel, which I've demonstrated that in a previous video. Just have a look through the playlist and you'll see it on a Replica Railways B1, I think I did it on. When I took the body shell off, this model was DCC fitted, and you can see there that the front wheel has been repaired. That is the balance weight cut off the plastic insert, and the wheels have been painted with Tamiya matte black. Now, I couldn't find a spare for this, but what I did have in my stock was an old Airfix Prairie Tank loco, and I thought that the slide bars looked very similar, and here's one, and they are exactly the same size, exactly the same diameter. So I've robbed them off an Airfix loco, and I'm going to trial fit them to Roger's mainline 93XX to see if we can get away with using these. Now, like I said, they are identical to the mainline ones and early Bachmann ones, and they should fit on that crank pin. Again, with the retaining clip is missing, so I robbed one off an old mainline chassis I had. And here we are fitting it. The little clip will go on there. I'm just trying to test it with a battery to see if it will work. And the model turns over, and that slide bar and side rod seems to be working well. So using this small clip, I'm going to put that back on, same as before, using some pliers and toothpicks just to manipulate it around the crank pin. And this is Rogers 93XX running, and it's got an air fixed side rod, so that's both of them fixed. They will need, this one especially will need proper testing to make sure that it runs well. It is a little bit jerky on the battery test, that's because it's fitted with a decoder, so I will test that on digital. But here they are, the pair of them, identical models with identical faults, the swollen wheels, one with a brand new pair of wheels fitted, the other with repaired wheels. So to be honest, like I've said before in these videos, mainline tooling and early Bachmann tooling for its age is very, very good really, when you consider what the likes of Hornby were churning out at the same time. The detail on these models really is quite good for the time. And I do like these moguls. I've got a more modern one that I run on the garden occasionally. But yeah, they're handsome looking engines. If you've got an engine or anything you'd like to see repaired, help with, featured, DCC fitted, or donations to make to the channel, please email me at dansmodelrailways@gmail.com, and then I'll give you instructions on how to send it over. And I'll leave you now with the moguls running around with some colic coaches on Trains for Use test layout. I bought them here because obviously Mark's one is DC only, and this is the best way I've got of testing DC models. But as you can see, it's running around lovely with a pair of matching coaches. And Rogers was also given a spin, and I'm happy to report, as at the time of filming, that airfix side rod was hanging in there and performing admirably. So yeah, it's worth remembering, if you can't find spares for these models, that the airfix bits do fit. So thanks again for watching Trash to Track. I do appreciate the views, comments and likes and shares. Do leave a comment. I read all the comments. I don't reply to them all, but I do read them all. So please leave a comment. And I will catch you all in the next video. Bye for now.